Welcome to your storytelling. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to subscribe. For years, I believed my husband was just busy with work. Late nights, unexpected meetings, weekend conferences. I trusted him. He provided for us, showed up when it mattered, and never gave me a reason to doubt. Until one day, everything unraveled. A single mistake changed my entire reality. I wasn't looking for trouble. I wasn't suspicious. But fate has a cruel way of revealing the truth, and in one accidental moment, I discovered the man I thought I knew was living a double life. It was a normal evening. I was cleaning up after dinner while he showered, his phone buzzing on the counter. I never snooped, but this time, curiosity got the best of me. A notification flashed across the screen. Dinner with Anna and the kids. 7 p.m. My heart skipped a beat. Who was Anna? What kids? My mind raced, searching for a logical explanation. Maybe it was work-related. Maybe I was overthinking. But deep down I knew this wasn't innocent. Something was very, very wrong. I couldn't ignore it. I grabbed his phone, fingers trembling, and clicked on the address linked to the reminder. It was close. Too close. Just a few streets away. I felt sick. Why would my husband have dinner plans at a home so near, yet so far from our world? My chest tightened as I stared at the screen. I had two choices: pretend I never saw it and go back to my blissful ignorance, or follow the lead and uncover the truth. I chose the latter, knowing it might break me. That night, I drove to the address. I parked a few houses away, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My heart pounded as I watched the house. The lights were on, the curtains slightly parted. And then, I saw him, my husband, walking through the front door with the ease of a man coming home. He kissed a woman, Anna, I assumed. Then, two kids ran up to him, arms outstretched. He lifted them, laughing. My stomach churned. He wasn't just cheating. He had another family. I sat there, frozen, watching a version of my husband I had never known. He was affectionate, present, devoted. Everything he was with me, but with them. The betrayal cut deeper than any simple affair. He wasn't just sneaking around. He was living a lie, a carefully constructed reality where he was both a loving husband to me and a devoted father to them. How long had this been going on? How had I missed it? I felt like a fool. I wanted answers, but more than that, I wanted revenge. I drove home that night, my mind in a whirlpool of emotions: anger, confusion, betrayal. My husband came in late, just like always, kissed me on the cheek and said, "Love you, babe." How could he? How could he lie to my face, knowing what I now knew? I couldn't confront him. Not yet. I needed to be sure, needed more proof. I had to see just how deep this went. But every glance, every word he spoke felt like a mockery. How had I ever trusted him? This wasn't just an affair. This was a second life. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to stop until I had them. Over the next few days, I went through his things: bank records, credit card receipts, emails. I dug deep, and the more I uncovered, the more disgusted I became. He had been funneling money into another household. Expensive dinners, kids' activities, gifts, all paid for by the money he claimed was for business trips or work-related expenses. He was living a double life, and I was just another woman in his tangled web of lies. The lies were endless. Every time he'd come home late or disappear on the weekends, he'd tell me it was for work, a project that needed his full attention, a last-minute meeting with clients. And I believed him. Every excuse sounded reasonable, sounded true. But now, every word he said felt hollow. He had been spending his weekends with them, Anna, the kids, not in some meeting room or on a business trip. He'd been playing house, playing the role of a loving father and husband, while I remained in the dark. One night, I almost confronted him. He came home late, smelling faintly of another woman's perfume. But I stopped myself. If I confronted him now, I wouldn't have all the facts. I needed more, proof that no words could explain away. I wanted to expose him, but I had to be smart about it. I had to know everything, down to the smallest detail, so that when I finally revealed the truth, he would have nowhere to hide. The anger inside me burned, but I kept calm, pretending nothing was wrong. I spent hours searching online, looking for any connection to this other family. Anna's social media profiles were locked down, but I found a few public pictures. A family trip to the beach, a birthday party for the kids. He was always there. A perfect father, a perfect husband. I felt my stomach turn every time I saw him smiling in those photos. He was living a dream life with them, while I was left with the nightmare of his betrayal. And all the while, I had no idea. How could I have been so blind? By now, the weight of his lies was suffocating. Every word that came out of his mouth, every little explanation he gave, felt like a slap in the face. He came home late again, kissed me on the cheek, and asked how my day had been, as if nothing was wrong, as if he hadn't just spent another weekend with his second family. I smiled and told him my day had been fine, trying not to let the bitterness in my voice slip through. But inside, I was shaking with rage. I was tired of pretending. I wanted to confront him. I wanted to shout, to scream, to tell him everything I knew. But then what? What would happen if I exposed him? Would he beg for forgiveness? Would he try to justify his actions? Or would he deny everything, lie through his teeth, and twist the truth until I was the crazy one? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I needed to take control. I couldn't let him turn this around on me. I needed to plan, to be strategic. I needed undeniable proof. I began to follow him. I told myself it was for the truth, but it felt wrong. Watching him leave the house, driving behind him, keeping my distance so he wouldn't suspect a thing. One Saturday afternoon, I saw him enter a park with Anna and the kids. He was laughing, playing with them, acting like the perfect father. I was hidden behind a tree, watching him with a sinking feeling in my chest. This man I had trusted with my life, was playing me for a fool. I couldn't believe it. The more I followed him, the more it became clear. He wasn't just sneaking around. He was leading two separate lives. The family I thought we had, the life I thought we were building, it was all a facade. He was living with Anna and the kids on weekends, taking them to parks, restaurants, movies. Everything he had ever told me about work was just a cover-up. How had I not seen it? How had I let him slip away so easily, so carelessly? I was angry, but I was also heartbroken. I looked at him when he came home that night, and for the first time, I didn't see my husband. I saw a stranger. He kissed me like he always did, told me he loved me, and asked how my day was. But all I could think of was the life he was living without me. The second family he'd built without any regard for the person I thought I was to him. I had to know more. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. Not anymore. I started to put my plan in motion. I didn't want to confront him yet. Not until I had everything. I had to keep my emotions in check. Had to stay calm. So, I began gathering information, taking mental notes, watching his every move. I started visiting Anna's social media pages, trying to find any details that could link him to their life. It felt like I was stalking him, but I needed answers. I couldn't just let this slide. He had made me an accomplice in his lies for too long. One day, I bumped into Anna at a coffee shop. It wasn't planned. She was sitting alone, looking at her phone, and I just happened to walk in. I recognized her immediately. She looked like the type of woman he would be with. Warm, kind, caring. We exchanged pleasantries, and she told me about her husband, how wonderful he was, how he worked so hard for their family. I couldn't stop the bitter laugh that almost escaped my lips. She had no idea who her wonderful husband really was. As Anna spoke, I felt a twisted sense of guilt. Here she was, talking about how much she loved her husband, how he was always so generous, so caring. And I wanted to scream at her, tell her everything, reveal the man he really was. But I held back. I didn't want to risk tipping my hand. So, I sat there, nodding along, pretending like I didn't know the truth. I wanted to tell her, but I wasn't sure how she'd react. Would she believe me? Or would she think I was just another jealous woman? The more I dug, the more I uncovered. His phone was a treasure trove of lies. Secret messages, calendar events with Anna and the kids, pictures of happy moments I would never share with him. The betrayal was suffocating. Every text, every photo, was like a punch to my gut. How could he do this to me? To them? I wanted to confront him, to demand the truth. But I needed to be sure. I needed to have everything, every last shred of evidence. I wouldn't let him talk his way out of this. The day I finally confronted him was a day like any other. He came home late, as usual, smelling of alcohol and cheap cologne. An odd combination, but it wasn't what caught my attention. It was the look in his eyes. Something had shifted. Maybe he sensed I knew. Maybe he felt my distance. But whatever it was, I knew the time had come. I stood in the doorway, my voice steady but cold, and asked him if there was anything he wanted to tell me. The silence that followed was deafening. At first, he denied everything. He tried to explain, to justify his behavior. Work pressures, the stress of our marriage. It was all my fault, he said. But as I laid out the evidence, the photos, the messages, the times he'd been working, his face paled. His words became less convincing. I could see the guilt in his eyes, the crack in his calm exterior. For a brief moment, I saw him for what he truly was, a man caught in the lie of a lifetime. And that was when he admitted it. Once the floodgates opened, there was no stopping the truth. He told me everything, or at least as much as he thought I needed to know. The second family, the lies, the guilt that had been eating him up. He spoke about Anna like she was someone he truly loved, and about the kids like they were his own. My heart shattered, piece by piece. He had been living a double life for years, and I had been none the wiser. How could I have been so blind? How could I have trusted him? I didn't know how to feel. Anger? Betrayal? Pain? All of those things surged inside me, mixing with the memories of the life I thought we had. How could I reconcile the man who had been my partner, my confidant, with the stranger he had become? I wanted to lash out, to scream, to break something, anything. But all I could do was cry. I cried for the lost years, for the false hope, for the family I had thought we were. The truth felt like a weight on my chest. It was suffocating. After the confrontation, everything was different. The house felt colder. He slept on the couch that night, and I stayed in our bedroom, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. His words echoed in my mind, but they were meaningless now. He was just another man who had betrayed me, another liar who had stolen my trust. I didn't know what to do next. Should I leave? Should I stay? The future felt uncertain, and I was paralyzed by the weight of my choices. The days after the confrontation were filled with tension. He apologized, over and over again, but his words felt hollow. He begged me to forgive him, to let him prove that he could change. But I couldn't forget what I had seen, what I had heard. The lies had been too big, too damaging. Every time he spoke, every time he tried to make amends, I saw Anna's face, those children's smiles, and the life he had built behind my back. Forgiveness didn't come easily. I began to see him for what he really was. A man who had been living in a fantasy world, convincing himself that he could keep it all. A loving husband to me, a devoted father to them. He thought he could have it all, and in doing so, he destroyed everything. I couldn't look at him the same way anymore. Every time he touched me, I felt repulsed. Every word that came out of his mouth was just another lie. Another piece of the puzzle that had shattered my world. I couldn't do it anymore. I had spent years being lied to, living in a relationship built on a foundation of deceit. The man I had married was gone, replaced by a stranger. I packed my bags, took one last look at the house we had built together, and left. I didn't know where I was going, but I couldn't stay. Every corner of that house held a memory of the lies, of the man who had promised me forever and given me nothing but heartache. The moment I left, I realized how much strength it had taken to walk away. It wasn't easy. It wasn't simple, but it was necessary. I had spent so many years making excuses for him, telling myself it was just a phase, just a mistake. But it wasn't. It was his choice, his decision to betray me, to choose another life over the one we had built. And in that moment, I knew I couldn't keep living in the shadow of his lies. It was time to say goodbye. The healing didn't happen overnight. There were days when I missed him, days when I doubted myself. Was I making a mistake? Was I throwing away something that could be fixed? But the more time I spent away from him, the clearer it became. I deserved better. I deserved a love that was real, a relationship that was honest. The pain was still there, but so was the hope that someday I would find peace again. Moving on wasn't easy. There were days when I thought about him, about Anna and the kids, about everything we had lost. But I reminded myself of why I left. I reminded myself of the lies, the secrets, the betrayal. The man I had loved was gone. And so, I had to let him go. Slowly but surely, I started rebuilding my life. I learned to trust myself again, to believe that I was worthy of love and respect. It wasn't just about leaving him behind. It was about reclaiming my life. I threw myself into work, into hobbies I had neglected for years. I reconnected with old friends, spent time doing the things that made me happy before his lies consumed my every thought. For the first time in a long while, I felt like myself again. The woman I had lost along the way was slowly coming back. It wasn't easy, but I had to keep moving forward. No more looking back, no more second-guessing my decision. A few months after I left, I ran into him at a coffee shop. He looked different, worn down. His once confident demeanor was replaced with uncertainty. He approached me cautiously, like he wasn't sure whether I'd be receptive. But there was no mistaking the guilt in his eyes. He apologized again, this time more sincerely, and told me he was trying to make things right. But I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even hurt. I was just indifferent. I had moved on. He no longer had the power to affect my life. There were moments, though, when old feelings crept back in. I would think about the good times we had shared, the dreams we once built together. It was hard not to. We had a life, a future I thought would never be taken away. But then I'd remember the lies, the betrayal, and just like that, the emotions would fade. I had learned that love wasn't enough to make a relationship work. Trust, respect, honesty, those were the foundations that mattered, and he had torn them apart. Eventually, I decided to start fresh. I moved to a new town, away from everything that reminded me of him. I rented a small apartment and began the process of rebuilding. My new life was filled with unknowns, but it also held so much potential. I could be whoever I wanted to be, free from the weight of his secrets and lies. It was a scary but exciting prospect, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly alive. For a while, I held on to anger. It was easier to be angry than to feel the pain of what he had done. But slowly, I realized something. Forgiving him wasn't about him at all. It was about me. I had to forgive him to release myself from the hold his actions had on me. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight, but I began to let go of the resentment. Not for him, not for what he did, but for me. I deserved peace. One evening, I sat in my new apartment, sipping a glass of wine, and it hit me. I had finally found clarity. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I wasn't bitter. I was free. The woman who had been trapped in a marriage built on lies was gone, and in her place was someone who could stand tall, who could look the world in the eye without fear or shame. I had survived the worst and come out stronger. I was finally in control of my own destiny. As time passed, I would occasionally run into people who knew my ex-husband, his friends, his colleagues, people who had no idea about the life he had been leading behind closed doors. I used to dread these encounters, but now, I met them with a calm that surprised even me. No longer did I feel the need to defend myself, to explain why we had split. The truth was clear, and I had no reason to hide it. I wasn't the one who had betrayed anyone. With each passing day, I grew stronger. I started dating again, cautiously at first, but eventually with a renewed sense of hope. I wasn't looking for someone to fill the empty space he left behind. Instead, I was searching for someone who could add to the life I was already building. I had learned that my happiness couldn't be tied to someone else. It had to come from within. And that was the most liberating feeling of all. As the years passed, I came to realize just how much I had gained from losing him. My life was no longer defined by his lies or his choices. I was free to live it on my own terms. I traveled. I pursued passions I had put on hold for too long, and I found joy in the simple things. The woman I had once been was lost, but she had been reborn, stronger, wiser, and far more independent. I was living a life that was finally mine. Looking back, I don't regret the time I spent with him. Those years shaped me into the person I am today. But I don't need him anymore. I've learned that life doesn't always go according to plan. Sometimes, The unexpected happens. And sometimes, that's exactly what you need to realize, that you are capable of more than you ever imagined. My future is now mine to shape, and I'm excited for what comes next. No more lies, no more secrets, just me and the life I've chosen to create.